Main objective of Locao is to explore the barriers and drivers to achieve sustainable practices in the workplace, looking at the way in which sustainable practices can be implemented in policies and in the social responsibility plans, no, regarding sustainability in organizations.
But one of the things that we're interested in is to what extent can we, if you like, reduce the carbon, decarbonise the production process, which is rather different. You know, it's what industry and others are producing. Can one produce goods in a more carbon effective, low carbon effective way?
This is important because this comes into the general policy, the general strategy of the European Commission for implementing specific measures for reducing emissions in 2013. Workplace is an essential space. It's a space where behavior takes place, and so the importance of the workplace is because psychologically the workplace is the second place in importance, in relevance for an individual. No?
It shows that the complexity of the behavior is important to analyze it at multi-level. It analyzes it at an individual level. It analyzes the individual characteristics, personal characteristics that influence in the behaviors.
The companies that are involved in Locao, no, come from the public sector, like the University of Coruña or the Municipality of Groningen, but also from the private sector, like Enel in Italy, or like Aquatin in Romania, which is semi-private. But we involve also heavy industries like Volvo in Sweden, or like Shell in the United Kingdom.
The part of Locao that we were involved in, as you say, was concerned with heavy industry, and we were looking in particular at two branches of heavy industry: Shell, which is responsible for the extraction and refining of oil and natural gas, and Volvo Trucks. Well, when you know that something like 6% of carbon emissions in the world are coming from the oil and gas industry, and then if you look at where that oil and gas goes, it goes into heating, lighting, transport. That accounts for something like almost 50% of carbon emissions. So it's obviously crucially important. So it is important that we actually understand how those industries are producing the products they produce, and what are the opportunities to perhaps reduce carbon emissions.
So there are two reasons. One, that they're very important in producing emissions. Second, that they have a policy of being environmentally careful. One of the three values they have is care for the environment. So we thought it would be interesting to look at a company which actually has as one of its core values to be environmentally sound. At the same time, Volvo is producing trucks. I don't know if everybody knows that Volvo is not producing cars anymore, because the cars have been sold to Ford, and Ford sold them to a Chinese company. So Volvo, as it is now, produces trucks, buses, and other things. And transport is one of the areas where you have rising emissions all the time.
Yeah, we did a study, our case study was the municipality of Groningen. And like many municipalities in Groningen, in the Netherlands, they aim to be carbon neutral already pretty soon. Well, before 2050 for sure, but even more soon. And they aim to realize this, for example, by using more renewable energy sources. But they also encourage workers to act more pro-environmental. So, for example, not to drive or to work, or not to use the car for their business trips, but also use more environmentally friendly modes of transport.
We were looking actually for a company that was a service provider, was a private company, possibly within the energy sector and renewable energy sector. And Enel Green Power, we thought, was a perfect choice because, first of all, it belongs to a large group. So it's a special company working with renewable energies and natural resource, and energy from natural resource, from wind, solar, geothermal, biomass, etc. So it's very specialized in renewable energies and natural resource energy, but it belongs to a big group which is Enel, which is a huge energy provider group, so working also with traditional energies.
We looked at this through focus groups and in-depth interviews because we wanted to get the most important visions of the participants in our case study organizations. And so by doing that, what we actually did is look at those dimensions that were important to them. So we wanted to look at the behaviors that were important in everyday practices in the 3 areas that Lockout has studied. But we also wanted to see what are the most important determinants that they saw for their own behavior and for what was going on in the organization. So we both use that as let's say, key actors. Yeah? So we use them as both key actors and also as workers and staff in the organizations. Backcasting scenario development workshops are a scenario development tool. So what we do with this is we can use it in a participatory fashion to be able to develop scenarios for the future that are normative, so that include an objective that we want to reach or a series of objectives that we want to reach, which in Lockout had to do with the reductions of greenhouse gas emissions for organizations. And they are workshops in which we take several steps to develop this vision first. So we start with the future vision and describing how we would like the organization to look like in the future. And after that we go backwards and we discuss the pathways that we need to reach that future vision.
Neste caso concreto do proxecto Lockout, pois a nos permitiu coñecer a percepción que os traballadores, tamén os estudantes, pois están tendo dos problemas ambientais e das solucións que están ao uso, e tamén coñecer, pois indagar sobre futuros cambios de tipo organizativo, de tipo de infraestructuras, de tipo tecnolóxico que deberemos ter en conta no futuro. Por tanto, é unha axuda importante para definir mellor tanto objetivos como solucións a aplicar.
One of them was particularly interesting, which was a vision of taking the university to the city. So taking it out of the campus in which it exists now and take it to the city in small classrooms, which would be present in each neighborhood, and so there would be a sort of a closer connection between the university and the community. So in terms of the visions in Enel is an important player in the issue of sustainability, because they are a producer of renewable energy, so they are a provider of renewable energy services on the market, and a lot of discussion in Enel about the future vision had to do with increasing the market share for Enel, but also making Enel much more sustainable as a company in itself.
An agent-based model is a computer simulation And what we do in it is we represent different people and the interactions among them. Often this is contrasted with other modelling approaches where they would model people as a distribution and not model the individuals. People would get modelled at the aggregate level. As agent-based modelers, we think that the social phenomena you observe at the macro scale arise or emerge, as we say, from these interactions among individuals. And so we think it's important to represent all the different kinds of people you have and the different ways that they interact and influence each other. It's also useful for exploring scenarios that you couldn't study empirically or experimentally. You have to accept the formalization of qualitative knowledge that these models contain. But if you're willing to accept those assumptions, you can see what might happen, possibly, if you were to do some intervention or change something in the way people interact or in the environment or in the kinds of people that are involved in the situation.
We specifically modeled Aquateam and UDC. The core of the model, as I said before, was the same for all the 6 organizations, but then we have differences. For example, one of the things that we needed to do, as I said, was to model the decision rules explicitly of the agents. And for doing this, we made clusters with the individual values, the profile values of the agents. In UDC, for example, we could not obtain a pure egoistic profile while we could do it in Aquateam. So the individuals were different because this data was obtained from a questionnaire in both cases, well, in all 6 cases. Another thing that was different was the social network that both organizations have. We implemented 2 types of social networks. A vertical one, which tries to reflect the relations with the subordinates and the coordinators of an individual, and a horizontal one, which tried to model the relations with their peers. In Aquateam, the vertical network was the most important one, while in UDC, horizontal network was the most important one, and this considerably affect the results of the policies.
Well, we've tried a wide range of policies. Some of them have been based on backcasting scenarios that have been done within the case studies. 2 that I've looked at personally have been the NL Green Power and the Gemeente Groningen case studies. In NL Green Power, for example, they had a scenario where in the future they were planning to move everybody from a central office in the middle of Rome to a number of sort of campuses on the outskirts of Rome. And in fact, these campuses would contain both the offices and people's homes all on the one site, and that would cut down on commuting. But also these buildings would be designed to be very pro-environmental, to have good environmental infrastructure, to be well insulated and things like this.
Well, in the analysis that we did in the LOCA project, we found that values play a key role, but that they need to be activated by factors in the environment, so in the situation. So the situation should signal the right cues to people so that they are able to act upon their values. Well, for example, if you're in a very competitive environment, it's likely that your biospheric values are not on the foreground, but you're more likely to act on your egoistic values. But if you're in an organization that strongly values corporate responsibility, then biospheric and altruistic values might be more prominent in that situation and you're more likely to act upon them.
I can say that the most important factors are legislations and regulations, in general the political economical context, and reputation. From my experience with Romanian organizations, but also with other European organizations, I think the most important influences comes from leaderships, and after that from organizational structure and cultures, facilities, and technology.
We were studying barriers and drivers at different levels: individual, the organization around, and the general context around. Now, social norms is exactly the concept that allows the individual to link to the context. So to behave not simply because he or she has a certain need or thinks something, but because knows that the other person around him or her will behave in a certain way or in another. So if there is a social norms, that means the knowledge and the awareness that other people like me will be sustainable, this will work in feeling, feeling connected to the group I'm working with, and knowing that the group is doing something for the environment. I will be encouraged, there will be a drive to have a more sustainable choices, more sustainable behavior and low carbon practices.
One of the findings of the project has been that we need to encourage a transition, we need to encourage workplaces to develop environmental cultures within themselves in the same way that in sectors like the oil and gas sector, for example, there's a very well-developed safety culture. This same kind of culture development needs to happen within the area of environmental behaviours. So the development of an environmental culture is one key issue. Another key area that we've found in the project is the importance of social networks.
One of the quite disappointing things that we've found is that there are not more opportunities for workers to make suggestions in the workplace as to how carbon emissions can be reduced within the workplace.
Como poden aprender prácticas sostibles? Pois levándoas a cabo no propio lugar de traballo, por suposto tamén na vivenda, no fogar. Pero no lugar de traballo pois é necesario que a infraestructura e a organización pois do día a día permita esas prácticas en primeiro lugar, e en segundo lugar fai falta pois o esforzo na concienciación, incluindo pois o exemplo das persoas dirixentes a nivel social e a nivel da universidade en particular.
Sustainability is one of the very important activities and strategies of organizations and of companies, and it has to be integrated in the strategic plan of the organization. It has to be considered when developing the human resources management. It has to be taken into account when organizing the work system and the organizational structure and the communication structure and the leadership. And in all those aspects, the contributions that have been developed in the research of this project are relevant inputs in order to improve the management of the organization and in order to make them more sustainable, more productive, and more human in a sustainable environment.
Well, they can do many different things. First, they should make sure that people can act pro-environmentally, so they should facilitate the behavior. There should not be strong barriers. Second, there should be all kinds of norms signaling that acting pro-environmentally is important, and they have to make sure that management follows these norms, but that they also communicate that all co-workers also appreciate these norms and act upon them.
I think the need for creating an environmental culture within the organisation so that people think, is what I'm doing going to damage the environment? What could I do so it would have a smaller environmental impact? I think that's the first thing that one could do. I think the second thing that one could do, and this particularly relates to industry, is about transforming industry. Do we need to produce the goods that we produce?
Because trade unions organize their members, so the members, the workers, are the ones who are really qualified and know how the production process functions, and they know what kind of environmental impact that has. So to collect that kind of knowledge and to also further educate their members in that would be a role that trade unions have. And it would also be possible, probably, to increase their membership, because a lot of people are interested in environmental issues, and if they see that trade unions are promoting those issues as well, they will be more open to trade union membership, for instance. One of the important roles of trade unions would be to organize the members and the workers in order to produce such kind of suggestions for environmental change, but then they need to work under conditions where there is a good relationship between trade unions and management, and where there are good working conditions for the workers, so they have a space for that.
People can become agents of change within organisations, and that is by persuading others. We tend to think it's people who've got to do things themselves, which is true, they have, but I think they can also, if you like, become ambassadors for the green movement and try and persuade their colleagues to engage in more sustainable practices.
To promote the business case for low carbon practices. Second, providing a supportive policy landscape, and third, encouraging participatory practices within organizations. But after all these very challenging discussions which we had all the day, I think the first recommendation is to put more research in the organizations in general, and to put more applied psychology, if I can say in this way, in organizations.
One of the results was about the idea that we don't have a panacea. So social norms are important, but I don't want to, to give the message that we have just one concept. One of the results of the project, I think, was the idea that to be successful, we need different factors going into the same direction. So we need more policies going the same direction towards sustainability. We need both policy, organization, individual factors going into the same directions.
One of the key policy recommendations is that taking a critical look at flexible working and working from home needs to be further developed. Another key recommendation is the encouragement of participatory practices within workplaces. So many of our results found that non-participatory practices were a barrier to low-carbon practices at work. So facilitating bottom-up initiatives like, for example, allowing workers to make suggestions to management about how to make the production process more environmental. That's one key thing. Another policy recommendation is the need to encourage environmental cultures within workplaces.
If we are able to see together the social participation as an instrument of managing the environment, as an instrument for management the decisions related to emissions, to the greenhouse emissions, so we will be ready to discover how this approach can be effective in the sense that reducing emissions and incorporating a new system of production more related to the green economy, more related to the sustainable responsibility, sustainable social responsibility plans, well, we will be able to achieve the general objective of reducing emissions.